Hello.
Good evening, everyone. We'll get started in a minute.
Krista, I'm trying to make you a co-host, but I'm not the best at this.
That's fine. I think if you, next to my name, you have the option of muting me, and then there might be a little pull down menu. You might want to start with Kelly, though, I think.
Yeah, it's not giving me that. I don't know why. Because it wouldn't let me go in and take over as the host. It just opened up the meeting. So I wonder if
Yeah.
that's,
It doesn't look like you're host either, though. I think maybe that could be it.
that could very well be it.
But I think that's, we can work with that.
Okay,
We'll figure that one
because
out.
I tried to sign in and I don't know if it was assigned to Rebecca, if that's why it wouldn't let me. That could be the reason.
Yeah.
But as long as we can do everything, then.
Yeah, I think we might not be able to do, like, if we decide to do small groups, if we have a small number that show up, then we can just do everything as a group, as a big group. We'll just get a sense of how many show up. So Judy, I don't know how long you want to just wait a few minutes in case there's some folks that show up. I see much of our steering committee, which is great.
Yeah, no, I think we can start, and as people jump on, they can join in, that's fine. Thank you everyone for coming to the Open Space Forum. This plan update was a long time coming. The last update was 2005. Some of the goals remain the same. Hopefully we'll get them accomplished this time. But I think post-COVID lockdown, people have a heightened interest in our open spaces, our recreation areas. So I'm hoping that will increase the interest in their protection, their preservation, how we look at development around these areas, encroachment on wetlands, things like that. So I think the timing is right for this. And I also want to thank Steve Mayo and Town Council for funding this project, for underwriting the consultants we have here tonight from the Horsley Witten Group, Krista Moravik and Kelly King, our planners. Steve Mayo really helped push this forward, and that was a huge boost to get this off the ground. So with that, I'll turn it over to Krista and Kelly, and we can get things rolling.
And I will turn it. So I'll just introduce myself. My name is Krista Moravek. I'm a planner at Horsley Witten, as Judy mentioned. Kelly King is my colleague, and we have a couple of other folks from our office, Gabby and Jeff, and they may not stay on the whole time this evening, depending on how many show up tonight. But I am going to turn it over to Kelly, and she's going to start us off, and I will share the screen for you.
Okay, thank you everyone. Good evening. Again, thank you for coming to tonight's workshop for Wakefield's Open Space and Recreation Plan. It is, and I think we're good to go to the next slide. Perfect. So our objectives for tonight: 1, understand what an OSRP is. 2, we want to learn from other project and planning work that's already been done in town. And then 3, confirm what's been said by the community already about open space and recreation resources and get direction on how to move forward. So that's to say that there's been a lot of recent planning, including the ongoing master plan, and we want to ensure that the OSRP is incorporating and supporting relevant information and goals and community feedback. And then, thanks. So our agenda for tonight, I'll provide a general overview of what an OSRP even is, and then Krista will review Wakefield's recent open space and recreation planning before we hopefully move on to group discussions to review potential needs and policy direction. So overview of the OSRP. What even goes into an OSRP? Well, first, open space is one of the main things that we're talking about. And when we say open space, we mean undeveloped land, such as the town forest, that has conservation or recreation interests. Common benefits of open space include supporting public access to nature through things like trails, protecting water quality, and protecting wildlife habitat. For the OSRP, we also focus on recreation, which in this context is really focused on outdoor recreation spaces. So your neighborhood parks, playgrounds, athletic fields, and courts. And these facilities often support more structured play and athletic activities. And of course, both types of sites are important for maintaining a high quality of life here in Wakefield. So Wakefield has many different types of open space and recreation resources. The OSRP is interested both in the big picture vision for what open space and recreation looks like in Wakefield, but it also allows us to talk about individual sites and how they can be maintained and enhanced. And so while we may talk about open space and rec in other plans that the town is doing, the OSRP really gets into the specifics, and we really focus in on and hone in on those open space and rec resources more specifically than other plans. Next slide, please. So what's in an OSRP? Well, the State Division of Conservation Services has very specific requirements for OSRPs. They must be updated every 5 to 7 years. There's several sections. The first few, the community profile and resource inventory sections, address this question of where are we now? And so topics include looking at population data and trends, environmental features and their conditions, land use regulations, kind of management of water and stormwater. The needs analysis is asking, well, where do we want to be in the future? And so this is considering needs both from the perspective of residents and municipal bodies that are responsible for management of resources, but also from the environment itself, so natural resource needs. And so from the needs analysis, we take that and we can craft more specific goals and objectives about what we want the future to look like. And then finally, we have that action plan, and this is the 7-year action plan, and it's really asking, well, how do we get to where we want to be? And so this lays out the strategies necessary to achieving those community goals and objectives. And why do we need an OSRP? Well, there's many social and environmental benefits of open space and recreation resources that the town wants to protect. We know that they're important for a healthy environment, for clean air and clean water. They help residents lead active lifestyles, and they're important community gathering spaces. And so the OSRP is that overarching reference document for the town that the town uses to guide its management of these resources. And when the town goes out to look for funding for open space and rec projects, some funding sources require the town to have a current OSRP. And in general, the OSRP can demonstrate that the town has evaluated its resources and community needs, and that they align with whatever the goal of the project that the town is seeking funding for. Next slide. The OSRP process, what have we done so far? Well, we've reviewed existing data and reports, started to write those inventories. We've done a lot of outreach to town staff and stakeholders. So we've talked to municipal bodies, including Public Works, the Recreation Department, the Council on Aging. We've talked to other stakeholders, including the Youth Council. Right now, we're in this public input phase. So we're really focused on talking to the community, understanding what the community's needs are. After tonight, we'll continue drafting the OSRP, focusing on needs. We'll then have a second round of public engagement over the summer. And then ultimately, we're looking to submit to the Division of Conservation Services, which is the state body that approves this in late summer. And then last but not least from me, we do have a community survey open. We are getting responses rolling in. We will keep this open until May 12th. And in this survey is really seeking to understand how you as a community member use open space and recreation resources. And then it gets a little bit into the specifics of how you think they could be improved or enhanced. I will turn it over to Kristen. All right, Kristen, I think you got to unmute.
Of course I do. I have too many things. So I'm going to touch on sort of the open space and recreation planning projects that are happening. And as Kelly mentioned, you know, we want to make sure that we're incorporating the findings of these studies. We're identifying where things that we can either enhance or take forward, but we also recognize that there was a lot of public input in the development of some of these plans. And so we want to make sure that we are recognizing the concerns and the desires around these resources when we start drafting the plan. So first, some initiatives around resiliency, climate resiliency, natural resource protection, and I'm actually going to start on the right-hand side. So, the Lake Quannapowitt Committee report, they did that in 2016, really recognizing the need to address water quality. So, ensuring that that is done to improve water quality and to take actions to reduce pollutants that are going into the lake. So since then, there have been some stormwater related projects. So projects that really focus on improving drainage or reducing runoff and erosion that's going into the lake. So this is just a list of current projects that are happening. And there are some that are going to happen in 2024 and that are in design. So there are efforts that are continuing to happen. In 2020, Wakefield participated in its municipal vulnerability preparedness resilience workshop. So really looking at what natural hazards or climate impacts is the town most vulnerable. So they were talking about heat waves, droughts, more intense storms and flooding, and what are some actions to help mitigate some of those and help the community adapt, help it be more resilient. So here's just a sampling of those that we can think about as we start drafting the OSRP. Overlay protections for the lake and making sure that, looking at its primary pollutants. So looking at reducing fertilizer, promoting more appropriate landscaping and plantings, looking at ways to purchase water supply land for protection. So thinking about how to protect important resources, a tree implementation program. So thinking about heat and sort of maintaining, enhancing that tree canopy, and then green infrastructure, which is a term kind of similar to stormwater management, but sort of using looking at nature as a way to reduce stormwater runoff, reduce runoff from the rain, and trap those pollutants. So walking, biking, and rolling. So initiatives around that. So when we think about bike paths and things like that, we're thinking about recreation, how we're being active, but there are also, people are also thinking about it and how they commute and they get around town. So there are several projects that sort of overlap into open space and recreation. So we think about how we connect to different places, and can we do that by walking, biking, taking transit. So complete streets, for those of you who aren't familiar, so complete streets is when we think about a road, we're thinking about not only sort of the car, but also is it safe to walk? Is it safe to bike? Are there options to take public transit? So sort of taking a more holistic view of the roadway. The town also recently drafted a bicycle and pedestrian plan. Again, talking about safety, but we find that we're sort of drawing into the open space and rec plan is connecting key destinations. And we see parks and the town's conservation areas as places to connect. Those are our destinations, but also connecting to regional networks, so regional resources, regional bikeways and greenways. The plan also talks about some specific site improvements and some maintenance needs. There are some ongoing regional projects. So the Wakefield-Linfield Rail Trail, which I believe the towns individually are working towards that effort. And then the MAPC, so the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, their Mystic Highlands Greenway. And so that also, incorporates the bike and ped plan. And it looks to connect Melrose, Stoneham, Reading, and Wakefield on and off biking and walking alternatives to sort of make this larger regional network. We wanted to highlight Wakefield for All, so that's the town's age-friendly action plan. So this plan talks about a lot of things related to older residents and being able to live fulfilling lifestyles, high quality of life in Wakefield. And they touch on housing and transportation, but they also talk about outdoor spaces, and there are definitely some connections to open space and recreation. So here are some of the things that have come out of that are in that plan that we want to sort of build on, working with the recreation department to ensure that outdoor spaces have uses for all ages, and working with the Disability Commission, thinking about accessibility, accessible equipment, playgrounds, but really for all ages, all abilities. One thing specific is incorporating some outdoor space in its programming for the senior center, promoting mass and motion, so more walkability, so sort of connecting to the previous slide, and making that more accessible for those who are older. And then just monitoring progress of the rail trail. I think you can kind of see how all these things are starting together. And these are accessible picnic tables. These are at the Maple Way Playground. So, thinking about that when we're talking about open space and recreation. Kelly had mentioned this. So our the bigger effort that's going on in town over the last few years is sort of the Wakefield Vision 2030 and then the Wakefield Master Plan. So we kind of went through their documents and sort of pulled out some pieces that overlap and how, this master plans are usually and visions are usually long, looking longer ahead, maybe 10, 15 years, maybe 20. And so they're sort of big pictures, so they can be an umbrella for a plan like the open space and recreation plan. So we try to make sure that find ways to that they work in tandem and parallel. So some of the goals that came out of that Wakefield Vision 2030, talking about parks and improving and adding more walking paths and trails, comfort amenities at parks, more events and programming for the public at these spaces. They did touch on some environmental. So when we're thinking about resource protection, there was reference to creating a curbside composting program for the town, increasing awareness of the town's environmental resiliency goals. So the MVP project and the efforts that came out of that, how to bolster more awareness of that, and then considering more environmentally sustainable strategies to be more resilient to those impacts. So I included a couple of items from the public realm. And as Kelly mentioned, we really focus on outdoor recreation, but I did kind of highlight these two items here because there could be a potential for some outdoor recreational use. So one of the items that came out was a multi-purpose facility at a community center of sorts, so intergenerational. So maybe there might be some opportunities for outdoor facilities. And then the second one, public properties for potential multi-purpose civic facilities that could be recreation. So kind of thinking about that in those terms. And related, so they had their goals, and then the Vision 2030 also had some strategies and resources. So kind of diving a little bit deeper, and I would like to keep some of these in mind too as we get through the evening, but just, expanding recreational opportunities, adding more recreational amenities like pocket parks, more amenities at parks, restrooms, benches, thinking about accessibility and changes in interest for recreational needs. There's the multi-purpose facility again, townwide composting, and then again, environmental resiliency goals. So sort of carrying those themes through. So last April, during the master plan update process, there was a survey which kind of helped dive deeper into some of those needs that were in part of the goals. So these are definitely things that we want to carry forward. I think our goal tonight is to sort of confirm what these are, what was said, and sort of maybe if we can further land some of these ideas, that would be really great. I think that's really part of what the survey that's out there too for us is sort of pinpointing some of these things. So for example, so the first on the left, more outdoor recreation or public spaces. And these were sort of the top 3 responses that people were interested in. So yes, we want to take that forward. Add more pocket parks, and some examples that were provided in the survey are listed here. And so we want to make sure that we continue considering those going forward. On the right side, I think this is could be, having some relevancy for our discussion tonight. So improvements are needed at these outdoor open spaces. So at the lake, upper and lower common, including spalling, playground, breakheart reservation. So thinking about what those improvements are. And then there was a wish list of amenities. So thinking about comfort, lighting, more recreation areas. So let's try to figure out where we can land those. I mean, this is the opportunity of an open space and recreation plan because it is a 7-year plan and we can keep revisiting it. We can keep moving forward on these strategies. Whereas sort of a master plan is sort of a broader vision. We have an opportunity here to support that. So with that, I just wanted to pause for a minute and just didn't know if there were any questions about, I guess, the open space and recreation plan itself. I can't see everyone who's here. I know we have, I apologize. I was going to my participant list. If there were any folks who may not be on the committee, I know we have several committee members here thank you for coming. If there were any questions that I could answer before we sort of have a bigger discussion amongst ourselves. And I'm going to ask Kelly to sort of help me out with my screens. All right.
No raised hands at the moment, but I encourage
great.
people to raise their hand or come off mute. It's for a small group.
Yeah, we're a very small group. And I think we kind of had thought if we had a large group, we could do a big group discussion and then break out into small groups. But I think perhaps we could talk as one group. I think that might work out pretty well. I think we're sort of a mix of committee members and members from the public. So why don't we go that route? Folks are good with that? Okay. So I think first I'd like to talk about confirming needs and objectives. And when Kelly went through the pieces of the open space and recreation plan, one of them was talking about needs. And so there's those previous studies, there's a lot of needs identified there. We just want to make sure that how we organize it, we're on the right track, and then thinking about our objectives that are related to that. And then, so I'll have some examples for community needs and natural resource protection needs. We'll revisit management needs. That's really something that we can talk, that's how the town and others will sort of manage operations and those types of things to help meet the needs of the community. So I thought we could focus on community needs and natural resource protection needs this evening. And then we can switch over to policy direction and strategy. So policies are more of, how are we going to meet those needs? What's the general, how are we going to make decisions? And then maybe think about some strategies. And we can go through some of our suggestions, again, taking from these previous studies, our interviews that we have done to date that Kelly went through, and then some ideas that we had that might be of interest to Wakefield. So I'm going to so our first this is a very short list, and trying to organize things around bins, and we're sort of thinking larger needs as they relate to the community, whether for recreation or for open space, and how, thinking about what we just heard, we put together these 4 sort of groupings. So there's a need for more diverse recreation spaces or programming or amenities for people with different abilities and needs, but also with different age groups. We also heard walking, biking, and rolling is really important, and it's been touched on in a lot of different plans. So making sure that we are incorporating connections to the town's parks, its recreation areas, its conservation areas, but also other resources in neighboring communities or even regional resources that have the potential to reach Wakefield. And then the last 2 are really focused on maintenance. So maintenance and upkeep of the town's existing parks and recreation areas. And, that could just be, that kind of thinks about upgrading equipment and just having staff that's available to keep the areas clean. And then thinking about maintenance of conservation areas. This might be trail cleanup, signage, trail markers. So those kinds of things of conservation areas. And I know there might be different groups that participate in different ways to kind of meet these needs or to meet these objectives. But I think right now we want to just make sure that we're touching on all the things around the community needs. Now this is, and it is very much focused on recreation or being active. So I want to pose this to the group. And is there anything here that we'll start with, you don't agree with? I know they're very broad, or if you have a question about. And I would ask you, we have a small group. If you want to come off mute, you can raise your hand. You could do either way.
Krista, I just had a question. I don't have disagreement with this. I think that these are, fairly universally acceptable as good things. I was just curious if where in this or if in the surveys so far there's been feedback on kind of access to information and interpretation at the recreational sites. And I feel like for all the things we do well in town, I feel like that's an area where there's a lot of room for improvement. I didn't know if that was something that came up in the surveys or if there's discussion, because my only concern with this is if others agree that that's a need, I don't see how it really fits in with these 4 points.
Well, my other question, Sean, would be what's missing, right? And I think that's what you're offering me, and that's also what I'm interested. So where you're looking for more access to information about resources or about what's available at a site, at a recreation site or conservation. I mean, maybe you can.
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, part of it is that pushing out information, changing the way that some of this is shared. I think there are things that I didn't know until I reviewed the last plan, the one that we're revising now, and I'm like, oh, why isn't this information in a more user-friendly format, even on the town's websites and things? I would hope that's a fairly easy lift. The one that I think requires a bigger commitment of resources, and this is my opinion, but are also that interpretation and suggestions at sites and, connecting people to something else nearby if they're doing a walking loop or other things. When I was new to town, I wasn't sure how to do the Lake Quannapowitt loop, right? Like, because it's not obvious, because all of a sudden you're on the road, and I think those who use it regularly know these things. And I've always felt like there was definitely room for signage and other improvements around sharing information.
No, that is a pretty common, it's a common need, is information that's out there. Resource, I mean, the town, you have so many resources, it is, getting information out to folks who may not necessarily be looking for it either. So it's sort of sparking that interest. I think Judy might have mentioned, in the onset of COVID, people were seeking out these resources and like you said, probably couldn't find much information. So let's take that lesson and sort of figure out how we can incorporate it into the plan. Erin, I see your hand up.
Yeah, sorry, I was muted. No, I completely agree with Sean. I was thinking that this weekend, actually, when I was out with my kids at the JJ Round Park. And I know there's trails behind there, and I've lived here now, and this is the resident side of me speaking, for 10 years. And I didn't know that there was trails back there. And after talking, with Rebecca and Judy in my new role here in town, learning about all the areas that we do have in town that for improvement. And I think if the general public knew more of that and how you get the word out there, I don't know exactly how you do that more on a broader level. The whole jeweled, I probably am messing up the jeweled area there that we're trying to, make sure that we preserve with more trails and things like that. And I know they're working on doing a stewardship program. But I think going to what Sean was saying, letting people know just the basics of what's there. And I know there's trail maps everywhere. Online you can find certain things, but I wasn't really aware of that until I actively looked or been in the position I'm in now. So I think that's really important, and what that looks like, I'm not sure, but I'm sure that this plan could help with that. And then I also think the first bullet point is really important, diverse recreation spaces, programs, amenities for people with all different abilities and needs. I think that's really important because we're creating these spaces for everyone to use. And so making sure that's at the forefront, that these, I know all of them can't affect, or can't help, everyone, but I think that should be at the forefront of when we're looking at these spaces and creating that they can meet the needs of most folks. So
right. No, that's a great point, Erin. And one of the things that we are doing as part of the open space and recreation plan is doing an ADA self-evaluation of all the sites that are owned by the recreation department or managed by the recreation department and the Conservation Commission. And the idea is to find those diverse opportunities across all your spaces. And like you said, making sure that there are thinking about that as you either invest in these sites or what have you. So that's a great, thank you for that. And we are definitely going to get in the nitty gritty too. So Judy.
I just want to say part of the new Trail Steward program is signage at the trails. We're hoping to expand it at some point to kiosks that have information about the area, and also kiosks and signage and probably mapping in the conservation areas that are identified as well. So that is in process somewhat. It's just a matter of the logistics of the signage and putting together the mapping.
Yep. And to, Sean brought up, how do we make connections with other resources around?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But you have to make baby steps, like you start with one.
Right. And I think part of the connection portion could come through a public-private partnership when there are developments that are adjacent to conservation areas, encouraging them to make connections. I know there's a section of the rules and regs for the planning board that talks about those types of connections. So encouraging more emphasis on things like that, educating the permitting boards about these type of tools, permitting around wetlands, the importance of maintaining the health of wetlands when you're looking at developments close by. I think just heightening the awareness among not only the citizens, but also the permitting boards is really important.
I'm going to ask you to put a little pin in that last statement, Judy, if you don't mind. Anything else about sort of community, if we wanted to sort of concentrate on a residents' use or visitors' use of your sites or getting to your sites. Do these general bins sort of cover that? And I will say we are going to get into specifics about what could fall under here. Again, we had structured this for a big group, small group. So we'll touch on communities, and then I just wanted to go to natural resource protection, open space next, which kind of touches on what you did, Joe. But how do folks feel about this? And we can, if you have an aha moment in the middle of the evening, that's fine too. All right, I think I don't see any hands. I'm just gonna jump to the next one. So thinking about needs for natural resource protection. So a lot of the former work that, some of the stuff that we've been looking at in interviews, we've been, there was a need to address climate impacts. So the different types of impacts, if it's flooding, if it's warmer temperature, drought, protecting wildlife habitat. And, Judy, I think I would put in sort of resources like wetlands in that category, protecting and maintaining water quality, protecting and maintaining tree canopy. And, we can think about that sort of, is that public trees, trees on town land, and sort of thinking, what are some opportunities for that? But if there are thinking about education for, homeowners as well. The next bullet, retention and preservation of the town's town-owned spaces, either for passive recreation, but recognizing their importance for climate change and resiliency. So thinking about the goal of in your Vision 2030 about educating more about your resiliency goals of the town. So kind of recognizing the importance of these resources and meeting that goal. And then finally, promoting environmental stewardship. So there was talk of composting in that effort, but how do we sort of take that into a bigger conversation? So a few more buckets under natural resource protection. So how do folks feel about this list? Just sort of the overall needs and sort of a direction to head in, and then we can get into a little bit more specifics if that's helpful. So you can. I am going to put as a note for this one also is sort of educating, and I think of the permitting boards, I think you almost could put there under maybe almost all of these bullets and trying to figure out how to anything to add? Is there something that's missing here around natural resource protection? So we're thinking a little bit in a bigger picture here.
Well, I know the Conservation Commission is, we're trying to get a program started with the 5th graders where we have a consultant or an agent, Elaine Freeland, who has put together a lesson plan. And she's been in contact with one of the schools to see if they were interested in seeing a program that talks about how wetlands function, why they function the way they do, why they're important to us, and how that relates to habitat and the animals that live around them. So that's in the process now.
That's great. So I think promoting environmental stewardship, I think residents of all ages, right? I think that's a good point to make. And, I think when we think about actions, I think adding sort of education of schools and sort of incorporating some of that. There are lots of, we had met with the youth council. I know they're a little bit older than 5th grade, but again, very active, good opportunities to sort of help with some of that education. That could be just thinking out loud in that way.
We did this once 20 years ago, and it was very successful.
Great.
Unfortunately, we weren't able to keep it going.
I know Bill Renault is working on a program for homeowner stormwater management, educating them about treating their own stormwater, native plantings, things like that. So I think that will be a big help to heighten the awareness of, on a smaller scale, how everything impacts each other. The need for tree canopy, the benefit of native plantings, why we don't need gigantic sprawling lawns, things like that.
And I think part of that message is we all can do our part. No
Yes.
effort is too small.
Right. And I think the town is starting to set that example with their the initiatives at Wakefield, adjacent to the pickleball courts. They have a rain garden there, and also at the head of the lake, and they have other areas they're targeting.
Mhm.
So I think that helps. And I think the town needs to set the example and help with the education of what it is. And I know they have signage at the head of the lake. What is a rain garden? Why is it important? How does it function?
Yeah.
And how can you have one in your own space? And I think the more people learn about it, the more open they'll be to more natural alternatives.
So I'm just going to move on because I think I have, a few more. We would be moving into small groups, but I think we're doing well as we are. And I have put together, and I'm just going to, if you don't mind, I'm just going to switch my screen. About being on the fly. All right. So I think we have some additional sort of strategies or policy directions. These that you have given us are great and we can fit them in, but we had some ideas as well. And so maybe you could give us some feedback on those. One of the things we're interested in is, if you think it's a good idea, we're also looking for ways is there more information that you think would be needed? Part of our goal is to also help educate. And if there is some more information that we can put into the plan that would help make decisions or help, if it's educating the community about different things of why we would do something or why the town would do something, that I'm definitely interested in that. We are definitely interested in that. So I'm going to share again. So these were some items. So switching back to our community spaces and our recreational spaces. These might touch on some of the things that you mentioned earlier, which are a bit towards conservation, but maybe if we're thinking about maybe put our recreation hats on a little bit. So is there so what either you would not support, or maybe you think you would need more information before sort of going forward with something? So the first is, dedicating a budget, a regular budget for capital improvements for the town's parks and recreation areas. So this might be adding new amenities, updating new amenities, developing policies that increase access. So we're thinking about ADA. I don't know if universal design is a concept that people are aware of. So when it's not, so ADA is, requirements and standards. Universal design is sort of a process in which we design a park or a playground, and we're thinking about all different abilities and different ways people might use a site. So kind of having a broader look on how a site space is designed. Pocket parks had come up, so creating more pocket parks in neighborhoods, really focusing on those that really lack access to recreation and open space. So thinking about how spaces are distributed throughout Wakefield and where more opportunities can be put. And then the last one is just the variety of facilities and programming that exists. So is there a high demand for pickleball? Is there a high demand for a certain age group to have more programming? Or, is there new ideas or new experience? People are looking for new types of things. And I don't know if there was anything specific that speaks to you from this list that we should give us some direction to sort of take a deeper look at. And I had that list of pocket parks. Yes, Erin.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything that is in these 4 bullets that's stated. I think, something to think about too, Wakefield's pretty built out, and we're seeing a lot of redevelopment opportunities occurring. How do we work with, these new developments to create more open space, or use the small open space they may have to have more recreational opportunities for their residents where they may not have that typical, green space. So I guess that would fall under bullet number 4, but that's something maybe like Judy was saying with our boards, educating them on trying to work with the developer or applicant to include that in some of their plans, because it also benefits the whole community too. So
Yeah.
I'm thinking 200 Quantapowhat doing another trail or boardwalk through their development too, which will benefit the whole community. So, but I love the idea of small pocket parks as well. And, town policies too, which I talked about with different needs, and always would love more money to make those capital improvements, I think, for many things. But, I think like you were alluding to, if anything, COVID's shown us that people, enjoy having those outdoor spaces to go to more than ever. And I think the town has done a good job with adding the outdoor pickleball courts, making improvements at some of our other parks, and maybe dedicate budget, but also, do a better job of finding more grant opportunities for these types of uses as well, because there's a lot of opportunity out there.
Yep. And I think to that point, I think part of the action plan is for all of the sort of actions that we're going to list, we do need to identify a potential funding source for implementation. So that would be part of our charge, is to help give you some guidance on where those resources would be. I had another point with what you were saying, but so that will be part of our effort, is to help identify and having that was it. Having a current open space and recreation plan also opens you up to more funding opportunities as well, which is why we're here. So thank you for that, Erin. Hi, Catherine, I see your hand up.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Okay, great. Actually, I was going to say what Erin said. So I'm I'm here. I'm a resident of Wakefield. I'm also Assistant Director of Health and Human Services, and then also wear a hat that's happening in about 20 minutes. I'm the advisor to the Wakefield Youth Council. But like having that plan will be really helpful because knowing, you know, where community development, recreation, health and human services can all collaborate, and and look at funding opportunities. Like for instance, we were looking at Moulton Park, and we did, you know, recreation and health partnered to pull in that grant with Council on Aging to create the fitness court, and now we're looking at pulling in the Bruins Foundation to do the street hockey rink, but things like that. So once we have the plan and making sure all the town partners kind of come together and look at the plan and look for opportunities together, because I think there's so much opportunity for collaboration amongst our different departments and using the plan to guide that.
Yeah, that is a great point. To build those, and we're hoping, so when we go through this process, we can share that with all of you. We can continue to get feedback on where those opportunities are, or at least help set up to go forward too. Great. Sean, I see your hand.
I'm not really bringing anything new to the table at this one, but just Judy mentioned two things a few minutes ago. The Trail Stewards program that she's championed, and also the opportunity for public-private partnerships. And so it just seems to me that those are strategies and tools that, you know, already have momentum, but they should be made explicit in the policy directions and strategies. You know, because this is a great opportunity to really enshrine that. And the same way that some of these bullet points mentioned dedicating budget to make sure that those roles and priorities continue beyond the, you know, the personal priorities of insightful people who are currently in working for the town, and that it has, you know, it's enshrined beyond just their commitment to that, right? So, because those are both great things, and this that are starting now, and if it's in here, they can maybe move faster.
Right. And you know, we also have to be mindful of capacity too, and who's leading. And so when we start to craft this action plan, we want to, you know, we want to do everything in the first year, but we have to recognize that we need to sort of prioritize. And when we visit you all again, visit the public again, is sort of thinking about that prioritization. We're looking to get all those ideas now, and then we can think about prioritizing. And, or, you know, sometimes there's, you know, you make incremental steps to meet sort of a larger vision. I'm going to move on. Oh, that was in case we needed to go back to that list. Oh, there we go. So natural resource protection. So for this, so natural resources in open space. So as Kelly mentioned, when we talk about those resources in the open space plan, we're talking about obviously the municipal properties, you know, public accessible properties, but we're also protecting natural resources. So thinking about with that sort of viewpoint. So the things that we have here is to think about the Community Preservation Act as a potential source of funding. So educating the public about the CPA and its benefits, and as a funding source, but also, you know, it has other uses as well. So affordable housing, historic preservation. So there's a multiple, it is a multi-purpose funding source, but is there appetite to pursue that as something? And that will help with recreation, meeting open space and recreational needs. The second is working with private property owners. So similar to what Erin, you were talking about, can they dedicate land or designate land, you know, for conservation or recreation? So thinking about it in that way. So sort of carrying that forward, like you said, Erin, and is there, you know, thinking about public access too. So when we think about that, the third bullet also touches on what you had, so requiring open space for certain types of development. So if there's, I think also thinking about how it might connect with nearby resources. So sort of working on that network of connections. And then lastly is to have policies in place to preserve open space and recreational resources that help with climate change mitigation, addressing climate change, helping the town adapt, because those, natural resources, they help us, they can capture floodwater, they can, cool the air, they clean the water. So how to, have that as a criteria for preserving land in town. So those are kind of very big, and I think we talked about some of these already. And that is sort of the common, in open space and recreation, those resources sort of overlap, and we recognize that. We try to separate them, but it doesn't usually work that way. But anything that might be missing about protecting natural resources? Just at a first glance, yeah, I'm going to start with what's missing. Climate, we're talking about finding opportunities in a town that's fairly developed, finding funding sources. I mean, that's something we can start with. Yes, Theo, I see you. Okay. I know, and I don't think we have a chat. I couldn't find a chat. So you know where to find me, Theo. I think we, as part of the committee, please forward your comments to me or to us, and we can incorporate them. Oh, that's too bad.
One issue, I don't know if we have data on this in Wakefield, but one issue that certainly has come up in the press a lot and people talk about in Wakefield on the community groups and things is just increased interactions with wildlife. Humans often see it as encroachment, but it does seem that there's been some changes, and I don't see a bullet point in here about kind of addressing both the public education part, but also addressing and having ways of resolving when there are conflicts or changes. We didn't have anything as dramatic as the bears running through some nearby towns and everything, but or a turkey getting in the news for attacking people. But still, like, these are things that, and again, I don't have data, so maybe it's just people like to think that it's changing or becoming more frequent, but certainly there seems to be space both for education as well as for, I know we said protecting habitat, but also protecting individual animals or having ways of resolving problems that arise.
Yeah, so one of the things that we talk about on the open space in the plan is talking about wildlife corridors, right? So places connecting connecting land that's protected so wildlife can use those corridors, so to speak, to move through the community. I'm not sure if this answers your question, but that's what comes to mind is ensuring wildlife to allow for their safe passage, making sure development, and sometimes that could be a bike path. They are going to travel a bike path, but so thinking about those corridors where wildlife can travel safely, and I think we are going to encounter if it's coyotes are big as well, turkeys, but public education is a good idea to think about that. But we will be talking about wildlife corridors as well.
I think that's a good point to make. And I think it also highlights the need for buffers around developed areas. I think it's a big issue around wetlands. And I think it continues around open spaces.
Yeah, and it's being mindful about land, if talking, if there's, dedicating open space for certain types of projects. I think meaningful open space, thinking about that. How does it connect with adjacent open space or protected land? And that's how you start to create your corridors.
Right, but I think also retaining buffers.
And buffer. Yep.
Yeah.
And that's that, but that can also be part of it, I guess. I didn't quite.
Right.
But that could be part of it. Theo, you back?
Yeah, no, I have a computer that works now. To those points, I'm hearing like really good best practices that Planning Board, Conservation Commission, and the ZBA would be encouraging. Is that, I mean, that seems sort of like a soft part of special permit review or things like that. I mean, are we able to, will we get some, I don't know, some best practices that we can walk away from to really help sell to in the larger developments that are going on?
We can put, but yeah, talking about, I think that's a great way to sort of to frame it as best practices. And I think that's part of when we talk about needs and the open space and rec plan, I think that's what we want to talk about is, this is important because, and here are some ways to achieve it and some action items, if you wanted to make it as recommendations, as requirements, I mean, that because, if it's going to be a requirement, that requires a whole other level of changing. It's a bigger level of amendments into your review regulations and things like that. I think we want to start with just best practices, encouragement. Is there a way to sort of, and if you wanted to go the step further to make changes to your requirements for development, that could be the next step. So, but I think we lay out a menu, think about those that might be of interest. We can talk to the planning board. Part of our role is to meet with the different implementing bodies of the open space and recreation plan, and we can talk to them about that and what their experiences are and how we could move that forward. But yeah, those are the entities that would definitely sort of push those ideas and get the results from those.
And I think it goes back to just educating the boards about the values of buffers, why a wetland buffer is critical for climate change, for habitat, why small encroachments do make a difference. I think it's just an education of why these areas are important and need to be protected and need to be advocated for. And there needs to be pushback, I think.
And we can talk about that. Great. Any other, I mean, clearly we are open to continued communication, more ideas, more thoughts. Anything that, does anyone have anything else they would like to add?
Years ago, the town used to have employees that would go and clean the brooks, that type of thing. I don't know how that relates to what you're doing here, but in some way that needs to be addressed because the lack of funding, you could be building all these things and no one's going to maintain them.
Mm-hmm.
Someone has to take that on. The town would have to take that on and go back to the way they used to do it. Get the guys out in the streams, clean the streams, and making everything flow and making it all work. Someone to keep up the parks so they look nice and neat and clean and inviting to people.
I think a lot of communities also use volunteer groups. And so
Yeah,
thinking about the capacity of a volunteer group, but there are some options, but no, those are good points to make, maintaining. So maintaining the conservation areas, maintaining parks. That is a huge aspect of when people write their open space and recreation plans.
And
And-
Wakefield did have an adopt a stream program through the Conservation Commission,
Yep.
and that was pretty successful.
Yeah, it was. We had the Boy Scouts go out there and clean streams. They loved it. They're out in the water in hip boats. They had a ball.
Scouts come up a lot as to help with, particularly in conservation areas, trail maintenance, all that kind of stuff. Joe, I see your hand up.
ZBA, I just had a quick question. So when I'm thinking about this, it like summertime comes to mind. Is this more like a summer winter plan, or is it more something that would be more utilized in the summer? Is there a way, I don't know, is there a way that it could be more attractive in the winter as, also, or is this more like a summer kind of, what I'm getting at? It's kind of like, to me, when I'm reading this, it's a lot of this, just, I think of summertime when I.
So this is the open space. Are you talking about the open space and recreation plan?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
this is a document that is not really related to a season. So this is a document that that the town uses to, in a broader sense about its open spaces and its recreational areas. So really using it, similar to a master plan, which is sort of encompasses, helps direct town decisions for how development looks, or how it directs funding, or how it directs investments in infrastructure. So open space and rec plan has a viewpoint. So how are we going to invest in our recreational areas? Some may only be used in the summer, yes, but this is sort of a larger maintenance, operations, protection. I mean, because you have recreation sites and natural resources sites, which are very different. They function very differently, but this plan brings them both together. So this is sort of a larger policy document for the town to help make decisions, sort of to address immediate needs. And it may be just summer activities. Rec department gets super busy in the summer.
Yeah.
That's when most of their maintenance happens. So do we talk about seasonal staff? I see those are the kinds of things, some of the actions may be seasonal, but the plan itself is something that it encompasses sort of.
Yeah, because like, I know you talked about pickleball and a lot of summer activities, but is there, I know some people, like my parents, like to go snowshoeing. Is there like, that would be a great thing for,
Yeah,
some
I mean,
kind of
yeah, so,
trails.
and a lot of times people want to increase activity in open space areas, not in the summer, like to recognize that snowshoeing is a great thing to do. I don't think we really ice skate anymore. I don't know if it gets that cold anymore, but absolutely, I think, so the recreation department, they're gonna be thinking about their year-round activities. But yeah, if there's more interest in sort of promoting more year-round activities, the Conservation Commission or whomever is managing those sites. I think that's all part of it. I know Erin had mentioned about, not a lot of people, she wasn't aware of sites that are in town. Obviously, maybe that's universal, but maybe you could say, oh, this is a great trail for snowshoeing in the winter. And so I think those are kinds of opportunities.
I know, just going through that survey, I mean, I had to look at, I've been here 10 years and I even had to look at the map because a lot of the areas I really wasn't familiar with myself.
And I also think too, with that, people might know them as different things, like their official name might not be how people refer to them as well. So we have them running across that. So I think that's just an action item that we can definitely work on.
Okay, I mean, one more thing that came to mind too, I know trying to get the word out a lot of times when I get my even like my water bill, there'll be like a pamphlet of like things to do. So it's like a lot of people aren't into, you know, social media, or I'm not. So, and it's not really, some people don't even think about going on the, you know, going on the Wakefield website and seeing what's out there. And sometimes it's just a matter of opening up a piece of mail and be like, oh, what do you know? There are a couple parks out there that I should be able to check out. So that's something to think about also.
Yeah, I like that idea. Utility inserts are
Yeah,
a great
exactly.
idea. And maybe you highlight a park or two or a space, and you know, maybe that's part of a promotional campaign. That's something that I love that idea.
Great.
Thanks. Just checking the time. We are doing really good. So we have a small group. So that really was, we wanted to get some feedback on those sort of directions, confirming needs. And I think we have some great ideas. I think we'll meet again shortly as a committee to start to pull together some of those next sections of the plan. Our next steps, I think are we all committee members here?
No.
I mean, our next steps are to I think we need to push the survey, which is very specific, you know, and it's very much focused on on specific sites, as you say. So we've extended, we were talking about May 5th, but we're gonna, you know, try to promote it through May 12th. We have about 25, Kelly. I think we had 25. So we'd like to try to find ways to increase that. So if you have your networks, I know there's probably some survey fatigue, but I think we have a lot of good information from the master plan efforts as well. And just meeting with you all was great. So with that, I don't know if there were any other questions or comments. This is recorded, correct? So people will be able to do it. What I will do with that, I will share one last time our final thank you and survey so people can see it. And I always, too many buttons. All right, so I'll share this one last time for those of you who are watching the recording. So here's our survey. It also has the website on the town's website for this project. You can go visit there for updates. And you can also scan this QR code and it'll take you directly to the website. So looking forward to hear from everyone. So May 12th, please share with your friends and neighbors. Any other questions or comments that folks want to share? Yes, Karen.
Sorry if I missed this, but is the survey available as a paper version anywhere that I could put out at the senior center?
Yes, we can get that for you. I think,
I don't think I got it, but maybe I just missed it in an email.
No, I don't. Nope, but we can follow up with that. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Can you make some available at town hall as well? Was that going to happen?
Yep.
So
can we, okay, so Judy, you and I will coordinate. We don't need to decide that now.
Yep.
But paper copies will be available.
Great.
I'll do data entry if you need it.
Thank you, Theo. All right, well,
And
thank
Judy,
you all.
oh, sorry, Judy, you shared it with all the different committees and things like that, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And town council and yeah.
So it might be worth a weekly push, a weekly reminder, and that kind of thing.
Yes.
Little needle.
Right. Exactly. It helps.
All
But I think just getting the list of places out helps, because I think the consensus was that a lot of people didn't know a lot of these areas. So maybe they'll go out and take a look, and that's what's going to help with the appreciation of them and the protection for the long term.
Yep, so part of our survey is increasing our awareness, and the weather is
Right.
getting nicer, so that's great.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, good time of year. All right,
Thank you so much.
thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
We appreciate it. Appreciate your time tonight. Good night.
Good night.
Night, thank you.
Thanks.
Good night. Thank you very much.
Mm.